Operating system attacks. When it comes to operating system attacks, the issue here is that many operating systems today include a very big number of services as well as ports that could be opened up that are activated by default. Now, the reason why that they're sometimes programmed this way is because, again, the operating system manufacturer is trying to make it easy as well as trying to make it fully featured. And again, anytime we get into, and this adds to complexity. And again, as we've talked about before, anytime we talk about increasing our complexity, we're talking about creating security holes for us. So most of the time, attackers are actually looking for different ways to gain access to these known vulnerabilities based off the OS. Some of those vulnerabilities are actually created just by the defaults that get implemented. And I'm not going to pick on just one OS here. Not necessarily Microsoft. I mean, all the OSs have their own defaults, and some of the defaults are locked down really, really well. I always think it's kind of interesting that everybody always talks about how Microsoft isn't very secure. And I'll be honest with you, I should give you a full disclosure. I am a Microsoft trainer as well. And I always hear about people get upset by something called the UAC, which is that little pop-up that annoys the bejeebas out of every IT guy that comes up and says, are you sure you really want to do what you are about to do? Because you're going to make a modification to the registry, or you're going to be making a modification to a system file. And everyone always complains about that. Well, what's funny is that before it warned us about that, people complained that it was allowed. It's like a huge catch-22, and I always throw this out there too, and that is Linux systems have been doing that for years. So in order for a ethical hacker or a security professional to protect themselves and the networks that they're working on, they have to keep up to date with the different types of exploits that are being discovered and methods that attackers are using, as well as they need to be monitoring their networks. Now, one of the biggest ways that attackers are able to get in via operating system attacks is because people have not, or IT guys have not gone through and updated their systems by patching them. Patching and applying hot fixes is not necessarily easy depending on your infrastructure. Several companies have tried to make this easy, including Microsoft. They've come out with their own little product called Windows Update Services. But if you don't have any training on it, you don't know what you're doing, you may not actually implement it. Maybe it's too much of a hassle. Now, what I always tell people when they're dealing with a technology like Windows Server Update Services, I always tell them that you can go through and you can actually, through the interface, you can decide which patches and updates to apply. I tell them to always immediately apply critical updates. And I would say that's the case with every application and OS, because critical updates don't usually make huge changes like a service pack. Typically, those types of fixes are there to solve an immediate issue or a zero-day issue. Now, some of these OS attacks can actually result in attackers implementing a buffer overflow attack, as well as exploiting network protocols and cracking passwords and possibly even breaking file system security.